There is comfort in repetitive movement. A yogi would say, I am practicing yoga. Perfection is never the goal. The process and what we learn about ourselves along the way is what matters. Stitching is like that. We carefully select our fabric, choose just the right floss, and we gather our tools, the scissors and needles. Then we take a seat in our favorite chair and begin to stitch. The needle goes into the fabric and comes back out. It goes in and comes back out. Stitch by stitch, we make beauty and find comfort as we stitch.
Hi, my name's Jackie. Welcome back to episode number 6 of my FlossTube Comfort Stitching. It's so good to see everybody. It feels like a lot has happened since I was here with you just about 3 weeks ago. Well, let's see. First, today is September 8th, 2024. And as I said, this is episode number 6. Last week, I put out a FlossTube Extra, which was the Florilegium tour. So I hope you got to see that if you'd never seen it before. If you had, it was just re-edited a little bit. So if you thought, seen it, don't need to see it again, go back and see it. There's always something new to be found at Florilegium. Also, Gretchen from Florilegium, I was talking to her yesterday, and she's got a chance to meet several of you who watch this channel. And she was so complimentary of everybody who she's talked to and who she's met so far. She said, Jackie, you just have some of the most friendly and kind viewers. And she said, everybody who I've met, they're just so joyful. So I am just so glad to hear that, because I think, people who are in this community, we all feel like we know each other. And of course, we all love the same thing, which is cross stitching. But I think we all appreciate when we see beautiful things and yarns and, all the things that I've shown you that Gretchen has in her store. So I did just want to share that with you. Gretchen has just so enjoyed getting to become a little slice of this cross-stitch community. And I hope you continue to patronize her store, whether it's on the web or whether you order from her, calling her on the phone. Just call her and say hi. I think she'd love it. So, the other thing that has happened pretty major since I saw you last is, my dog Archie had surgery. And first of all, I'll let you know he's doing really, really well. And thank you all so much for the thoughts and prayers that you have sent and for checking up on him. He had, for those of you who don't know, Archie is my 8-year-old Scottish Terrier, and he suffered a tear of a ligament in his knee. It was a cruciate ligament. And this is the second time this has happened. This was the right one. The left one tore a couple of years ago. And the veterinarian told us at that time about 60% of dogs that happens to. It'll probably happen again. So I was halfway expecting it. But he had his surgery. It was on August 29th. And he came through it with flying colors. And like I said, doing really well. I'll put a couple of pictures up here because some of you might appreciate seeing him. He's such a cute little guy. But we're just a little under 10 days out, and tomorrow on Monday, he gets his stitches out. So I'm looking forward to that because he might be able to have just a little bit more freedom once that happens. Just getting along great on 3 little legs. He's moving around so quickly when I take him to the lot across the street from our apartment to do his little doggy business. But he's also very quickly starting to put weight down through the leg that he had the surgery on. And some of you have wondered, how is that happening? Their dogs who have had this surgery, which was called TPLO surgery, are still in a cone. And part of the reason I think this is happening is because he has not had a cone. And he came home this time with a little sleeve that covered over the leg that had the surgery. But he's I quickly took that off because I had sort of like little post-surgical pajamas for him. And no affiliation with this company, but I wanted to tell you about it in case any of you ever are facing this with your dogs. It's called Buckwheat Dog. And you can see that there are just kind of a little half pajamas. I just call them Archie's pajamas. And they were custom made. You just send this company measurements of your dog and they make them up, these little like pajamas, cover up the two back legs. They have Velcro that go under the chest and then also around the front of the chest. So they stay on. And the wound is covered up. He has not bothered at it at all. He's not tried to take off the pajamas. He just gets along fine. He's a little frustrated that he can't really shake very well, and I do take him off and check on the wound and give him an opportunity to shake. But really, I highly recommend those if you have a dog that has any sort of surgery on their back legs, because this has just been a wonderful alternative to having the dreaded cone on their heads at all time. So, gosh, let's get to a little more stitchy related chat. I want to first, like I always do, start out with thanks. Thank you to all of you who continue to watch my videos, to comment. I just love reading your comments. Y'all have some of the most interesting and thoughtful and kind things to say. But also for those of you who shout me out, and I know I've missed sharing some of those the last couple of times, but I do want you to know that I do thank you so much for continuing to talk about me and my channel and all of the things that we do here. And I want to do a couple of specific thank yous today. First of all, I want to thank a floss tuber called Cross Stitch Bunny. Her name is Lauren. Like I said, Cross Stitch Bunny. She's a UK stitcher. Her channel was new to me. She's a younger gal, mother, has school-age kids, but she's quite the entrepreneur. Not only is she stitching and doing FlossTube and raising a family, but she has an online shop. And she does a variety of cross-stitch projects, everything from samplers to cute things to, I think she had some fancy ladies. And then her shop sells fabrics and charts and project bags and needle minders, and she has some kitted projects. So I would say, go check her out. Cross Stitch Bunny, her name is Lauren. Her shop is called stitchbunny.co.uk, and I'll put a link down below to that. So let's give Lauren some love. And then I want to send a special thank you out to Sarah of Sarah's Stitchy Spot. I mean, we all love Sarah, right? But Sarah has started just over the past couple of months doing some small Zoom chats with some of the viewers who watch her channel, and they, put their name in the comments. She draws a few names. She's keeping those Zoom chats small, from like 10 to 12 people. And what neat thing she's been doing is inviting a special surprise FlossTube guest to her chats. And I was so surprised when she invited me to be one of her special FlossTube guests. And I just enjoyed that so much. It was towards the end of, or middle to end of August that we did that. And it was really wonderful to meet the ladies that were on the Zoom call and get to know them a little bit better. Some of them knew me, so that was nice. And just also to see what everybody is stitching on. It's just so wonderful to sit down with each other, whether it's in person, if you have a group that you stitch with, or if it's virtual, like on a Zoom. It's great to be able to stitch with people who love the same things that you do and share what you're working on, what you might be interested in doing, and just what's going on with you. So thank you so much to Sarah of Sarah's Stitchy Spot for inviting me to join her on that call. And if you don't watch Sarah, what's wrong with you? You need to. go see Sarah, because she is just such a lovely contributor and a lovely person. She's so kind and just a wonderful addition to our cross stitch community. And then, gosh, some exciting news for a couple of our, actually 3 people in our cross stitch community are dipping their toes into some new waters. So I'm going to talk about that. First of all, Audrey from Stitch Bead. I hope you're watching her, because she stitches some lovely samplers, first of all. She stitches oftentimes on higher count fabrics, just some beautiful samplers mostly. She likes Hands Across the Sea samplers. So if you're a fan of those, you definitely want to watch what Audrey shares. But in her last video, she actually had a chart, a little reproduction sampler, an antique sampler that she reproduced. Let me just say it that way, because that's what she did. And she is offering that up to the community for a donation to charity, an animal shelter charity. And so go check out Audrey at Stitch Bead. I don't know if this is something that she's just going to do sporadically, or if she's thinking about doing more. But it's always wonderful when one of our people in our community decide to branch out and do something a little more expansive and different from what they normally do. So wishing Audrey well with that chart. And then Shellie, antique needleworker Shellie, who, if you have seen my very first video, you know without Shellie, I wouldn't be sitting here doing this. And I mean that, because if I hadn't seen Shellie's first floss tube, I would not know about the amazing world that cross stitch has become and is, and probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it. So Shellie from Antique Needleworkers has brought out she's become a designer too, and brought out some new charts. And she very graciously has shared them with me. And if you haven't seen them already, which you may have because they've been all over social media, but I'm going to take this opportunity to show them to you again, because I can, right? So Shellie has come out with 3 charts so far. One of them is a reproduction of an antique sampler, and the other 2 are original designs that she's come up with. So here's one of the originals, Be Ye Kind. And from what I understand, this is a first of a series. There are going to be a lot of these little be ye with various words on them, so you can start a collection. So that's Be Ye Kind. Then she has The Law of Kindness. And this was an original design, something she came up with. And if you're a regular viewer of Shellie's floss tubes, you know that kindness, just the whole idea of kindness, is something that she just embodies. And it's something that she keeps in mind at all times. So having a chart that's all about kindness is really all about Shellie. And then lastly, we have the reproduction, which is Delia Conger. And Shellie has the whole story of how Delia Conger came to be in her possession, the antique, and then she has some history in the chart of who Delia actually was. And there are quite a few people who have actually finished this already, and I know her friend Tiger Lily Designs has already done like a color conversion on that. So you would definitely want to go take a look at those. So that's Shellie, and I wish, gosh, I'm so excited for her, and just she's delighted with how this journey, where this journey is taking her, this journey of cross stitch. And, you know, who knows what she's going to come up with. And I'm sure it's going to all be lovely, whatever she comes out with. Because that's one of the words that I think of when I think of Shellie, is lovely. So go check out Shellie, Antique Needleworkers, and she has a website where you can get those paper charts or PDF. You definitely want to check those out. And then just this morning, like I said, today is September 8th. This is Sunday. I think I said that. Just this morning, coming across my Instagram feed was some other exciting news from my friend Marie, who is Marie at Stitches and Diamonds. Marie has become a fabric dyer. Oh my gosh. I think this is so cool too for her. You've heard me talk about Marie before because she and another friend, Angie, both are co-hosts of the Across the Pond Stitch and Chat Zoom group that I am part of. Now, Marie is a woman who wears a lot of hats. She also organizes the Stitch in London retreats, and I know there's one of those coming up in October. And now she and her husband are launching their own fabric business. She has quietly behind the scenes been dyeing linen and Aida, and they have come up with 12 colors to launch. And if you go onto Instagram, she has those posted. Her company is going to be called Swan Bay, and she will be launching her website on October 14th. She's going to start, she said, with linen from 32 count up to 46, and she's working on getting some consistent colors with 56 too, so that's coming. And then with the Aida, just taking a peek at my notes, with the Aida, she's going to have 16 to 20 count Aida. So just some lovely muted colors. There are neutrals, but also some colors. There were pinks and greens and blue, and there was a pretty lavender in there. Take a look at what Marie Stitches and Diamonds has to offer. And again, I'm just so excited for Marie. I just love her, first of all. And secondly, I just think this is a wonderful thing because from everything that the people that I watch from Europe and the UK, and they all talk about how much more challenging it is to get supplies than it is for us in the United States. So anytime someone is setting up a new shop or a new venture, I want to do everything I can to support them. And Marie assured me that she will ship internationally. So once her website gets up and running and she's ready to launch all that in mid-October, I want to be the first in line to support that. And she also said in her post that she will be showing those fabrics at Stitch in London. So for any of you who will be going to that retreat, you'll be able to see them there. So there is that. Firstly, I have Antoinette, 1894 to 1896. You will see that I've made some progress. First, let me show you the chart. Here we go. This is a reproduction of a French sampler by European Reproduction Samplers. And let me show you how I've come along. Last time we looked at this, I had just a few alphabets in. Sorry, this is a big piece of linen because as you saw, it's going to end up being a big sampler. But here we are. I've got that window to my left again, so let me turn towards that. So last time we talked, I had A, B, C, M, and N. And O, I think, was done too, or maybe partially done. And then the Sacred Heart. And just a tiny bit of the border. So you can see I've made some progress on this one. This is being stitched on 56 count Shrekie's Tan by Needle Bling Designs. And I'm using silk for the first time. I'm using Overa Soie 103 silks in the color number 664. That, when I was trying to decide what red I was going to use, I just started looking at red samplers on Instagram, and it just seemed like everybody's favorite color was 664. And I happened to have a couple of spools from a couple of projects that I had gotten at Sampler Symposium in January. And once I realized that was the color that was going to work best for this sampler, I went ahead and ordered a couple of extra spools. So hopefully I'll have enough to do this amazing sampler. And that chart also includes this little version of it, which has some blue accents. And I think, whoops, that was upside down. Let me show you that right side up. And this is Sabine, the owner of European Reproduction Samplers. This is her reproduction of it, and it has some blue accents in there, and I really like that, so I think I might be adding that to mine. And the other thing that I'm going to add to mine, and I've talked about this before, is I'm going to put a terrier in there. And right up, let me get this so you can see it. Right in there you can see two animals, an elephant and a kitty. And then there's a little basket over here too. So I've got a couple of places. I'm going to probably change that kitty to be a terrier. And thank you to all of those who suggested different patterns for those. I think I have found the one that I might adapt. It looks more like an Airedale, and I might just try and shorten the legs so it fits the space a little bit better. But I think I've got one. I just have not charted it yet because I'm not anywhere near being in that spot yet. So that is Antoinette. Let me show you her again because she's just so beautiful. Now, I know alphabet samplers bore some people silly. They don't me. I love alphabets. If any of you watched Judy Whitman, JBW Designs' latest FlossTube, she was talking also about being a lover of all things alphabet. So I was pleased to hear that. And she does a lot of things with alphabets in too. And I wanted to share with you a book that I got too. It's all in French, so, you know, I've tried to speak French before and it's not pretty. But this book, Alphabets Anciens, so ancient alphabets, I'm gonna guess, has a lot of really nice ones in it. It's a wonderful resource. I'm gonna have this on my resource library. It has all sorts of different things in it. Charts, history, and some beautiful photographs. So I've often wondered, why is it that we see so many really beautiful French samplers that had so many alphabets? And I just think there were a lot of them available. Most of them were from later in the 1800s towards the turn of the 20th century. So this is going to give me another project to do a little research into to find out what that might have been about. I do know the Sajou company put out a lot of little leaflets. You can see the snippet of one there in the corner. There were a lot of different alphabets, and the description that goes along with Antoinette talked about how many alphabets were in here and how it was just a collection of so many different, excuse me, different alphabets that had been collected. So that is, this one is Antoinette, 1894 to 1896. And I know several of you who watch have and are still ordering that chart from European Reproduction Samplers. I'll put a link again to them down below if you want to join me. That definitely will be a long-term project. I don't have any particular plans to have it done by a particular time. it did keep me company in the couple of days right after Archie's surgery. It was a nice one to work on as I sat here with him and just kind of watched over him while he kind of recovered from the anesthetic and that surgery. And that way, you know, even though it was on 56 count, which I don't have a problem seeing with readers and with the magnifying lamp that I have. But what was nice about it is I wasn't really having to think about changing colors. I knew what I was doing, and it just allowed me to kind of sit and be present with Archie, but to also keep myself occupied during the first couple of days when he was recuperating from his surgery. So it was really a nice thing to be working on. And that's when I made most of the progress on that, for sure. Finishing up the, or starting, I guess I should say, into the little alphabet and getting that basket of flowers done. So I guess now we'll move on to Bridget Power. Bridget Power, 1840. I do have progress. Let me first of all scoot a couple of things out of the way and pull some things out of the project bag I have this in, which is just one of those bags that you get from Amazon. No fancy project bag, because Bridget doesn't really live in here. She lives on the ironing board when I'm not working on her. But here is the cover of the chart. And that is the antique. This is a chart by Gigi R Designs. And last we spoke, I had flowers done. I had part of the draperies done. So let's take a look. Flowers, they were done last time you saw her. They've been done for a while. The top part of that archway was done last time we talked. But look. Woohoo! Got the side columns of the archway done. The side borders are done. And I started in on that drapery right there. Flowers are also always worth another look. So that's where I am with Bridget. And for those of you following along on the quest to find her, we have not found her yet. So that's the short answer to the quest for Bridget. There is a little bit to share. First of all, I just looked down and saw all the flosses for this. So let me show you those. I'm using the mostly the called for DMC. You see this guy hanging? That's not a called for color, but it's mostly the called for DMC. Stitching on 40 count. This beautiful fabric is called Up in the Attic, and that is by Fox and Rabbit Designs. It's a gorgeous color. And it is not the called for color, which I think is just like a light cream color. But this is something I saw on an Instagram post, and the reason I'm stitching this is because I saw an Instagram post, and the gal whose sampler I saw, she stitched hers on Up in the Attic, and I was just immediately in love with this and wanted to stitch it just the same way. So that's why I chose this fabric. And I really think, in a way, it has more of the look. It's not quite as warm as the picture, but it has more the look of the antique than something that is a light cream does. So I have made one more substitution since I saw you last and talked about the couple of substitutions that I'm making. So first of all, I want to tell you, like, these were the two greens we talked about. I'm substituting 935 for 934. Big change there. And actually, you know, I'm being sarcastic. 934 on this fabric just almost looked black, and I just thought it was a little too dark, and so I just lightened it up by 1 shade. So 935 is what I'm using. And then there's a color called 326, which on this fabric, the pink that is in this thread really pops out. It looks almost fuchsia, and in some cases can be fluorescent. So I am switching that up with Gentle Art thread Schoolhouse Red, because it's very similar, but because it's over dyed, it is slightly more dull in areas. And also it has a little variegation, and it has some darker red in it. And I just, for my taste, it's just working better for me. I am using the DMC colors in some places, but for the most part, I'm using Schoolhouse Red. And I've also, just the last week, some of the threads that I have tend to be a little bit too dark, where they're over dyed. And so I've been doing one leg of my cross with the really dark one, and then going back over it with the lighter one, and it's even giving me a different color yet. So that's also just a way of sort of changing up and giving a little variation to your thread colors without really switching dramatically the flosses. And then the other change that I made, let me get her up here, as I was working on the side columns which go around. See, I'm down in this area now, obviously, where the altar will be going in soon, but I wanted to get the framework around that. So I'm working in the columns, and let me show you, there's one of them. I was doing this while I was Zooming with Sarah and her friends. And I'm gonna try and get that close. You can see that design that's in the center of the columns. Well, in the very center of that was supposed to be the dark brown. The very center was supposed to be this really dark brown, which is DMC 3371. And I tried that, and as you can see, I did not end up using it. It was too dark in there. It just kind of looked like a stripe going down the center of that column. And I did the whole thing, and I slept on it. And then when I looked at it in the morning, I just thought, no, I can't live with that like that. It just wasn't working for me. So I unstitched it all. Yep, picked it all up. The frog came to visit. And I substituted it with a gold color that is not called for anywhere else in the chart. It's one that I just decided to use, and that is 680. So the gold that is called for here is 729. That's this lighter one that is called for in the chart. That's all the gold bits that are in this and throughout the sampler. And then I used 680 for the center, just the center designs of that column instead of 3371. So if that's something you want to switch up, if you're working on this with me, and I know several of you are, I just wanted to throw that out there, because anytime I'm making changes, I just want to let you know about it so that you're aware and you can make that choice for yourself. And then the over one lettering, also I changed from being 3371 to a 103 silk. It's a purple, number 527. I just didn't like the way that the DMC looked for the over ones. And this was the closest I could find what I had that was a similar darkness, similar value. And so I tried this and I liked it, so this is gonna be in there. And it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. You don't notice right away that it's purple. Plus, in these flowers, there is a little bit of purple that shows up in some of the pansies and these sweet peas that are here have a little bit of purple in too. So speaking of the sweet peas, after my last floss tube, Ray Niles of Red Barn Samplers reached out to me again. And Ray and I have talked about this sampler at the very beginning. She reached out to me on Facebook, and now I have her phone number. We've talked. We're friends. So anyway, she was just doing a little bit of ancestry work for me and found several people by the name of Bridget Power, which I've now come to realize is about as common in Ireland. That name is about as common as Jane Doe or John Smith in the United States. But that's beside the point for what I wanted to share about Ray. After she saw my last floss tube and I was talking about that floral border, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, so I'm just going to get it out here. This right here. This border has become quite the talking point. Because if you followed along on the saga of Bridget, you know that the original chart, we don't have any history on Bridget. It was just always assumed that based on her name, that she was Irish. There was no provenance on the antique sampler that anybody knew of. And the two people who might have known something, the first being Gigi R, she did not, because she purchased the sampler from someone else, and that person's name was Marianne Mongillo. Marianne did not communicate any history on the sampler, and Marianne has not been available to be able to find out anything about. And I don't want that to come across as criticism. I realize that might. Everybody has their own boundaries that they need to set. And over the past 3 weeks, I have come across Marianne's email address, and I did reach out to her personally. Prior to this, other people had reached out on my behalf, but I just thought I'm going to give it one more try and send her an email and just let her know. It's not that I was prying into her life or anything. I'm just trying to find Bridget. And if she had any information to share about how she acquired the sampler originally that might help us locate Bridget. That's all I'm asking for, just some information that might help us locate Bridget, this Bridget. I hoped she would reply, and she didn't. And again, that's okay. You know, everybody has to set their own boundaries, and for whatever reason, she did not. I don't know her life circumstance or anything else. She just has not been reachable. And so again, we're just going on any clues that we can glean from the sampler itself. And up until, it seems like anyway, here in the last few months of 2024, when I started sharing Bridget on my floss tubes, it just seemed like it was kind of an overlooked sampler. And the cover, while it's always lovely and helpful to see an antique, it doesn't, unfortunately, a picture like this doesn't give an adequate representation of what you get when you stitch it. So as this sampler has been taking shape, and as I've been talking to her, we've been finding out a little bit more about her. And you know, I've talked to Ray, and I've talked to Kathleen Littleton of Cross Stitch Antiques, and I've talked to several other people. And based on this border, this floral border, and really as it shows up more here on the sides, we feel pretty confident now saying that she, not quite 100% because we don't know, but feel pretty confident in locating her as being Irish. So that helps the search, obviously, on Bridget. But back to Ray. She got in touch with me after my last FlossTube because she actually owns an antique sampler that also has that same border on it. As well, it had a little border in the kind of lower third of it that had some flowers that were obviously sweet peas. And they were very, very close in style to the sweet peas that are here. Yeah, right here, right there. And there are, I think, some other representations of sweet peas maybe right there. But the ones that were in the sampler that Ray had were very reminiscent of these right here. Just the shape, the leaves were almost an exact, this little leaf right there, the two-tone leaf, exactly in the sampler that Ray has. And I wish I could show it to you, but Ray asked me not to. It's something that she has maybe plans in the future to release herself, and I can tell you it's beautiful. And Ray knows for a fact that the sampler she has came from County Wexford in Ireland. It's a little earlier than this one. I didn't write down in my notes here when it was. I think it was the 1828, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. But you're definitely going to want to watch for that if Ray releases it, and I'm strongly encouraging her to do that. But anyway, Ray and I talked about that, and again, just having another bit of evidence that locates this sampler in Ireland just helps fill out the story of this. Because one of the hard things about identifying this sampler is that there's not anything else like it. It's almost, except for that border, completely one of a kind, unique. And that's what makes it so hard to figure out. Obviously, Bridget was very talented at 13 years old, very talented, very devout Catholic, because that altar has very obvious Catholic symbolism on it. And hopefully someday we'll be able to add more to the story about Bridget. I do have a friend who I've spoken to about genealogy about this, because like I said, Bridget Power is about as common a name in Ireland as some that we have here in the States. And I asked my friend Angie if there was any remote possibility of finding a needle in a haystack when we don't have a place to begin. And she said, well, there's always a possibility, Jackie. And she has begun looking for me. I don't have an update on that. I hope to at some point. But now that we had Ray's information about the same border and then that little bit about the sweet peas showing up in Wexford, a lot of people with the last name of Power were in Wexford and Waterford. I know we talked a little bit about Waterford in my last video. So, you know, we could find her. Of course, there's a possibility she became a nun. I've looked into figuring out how you find out who was in religious service at that point. I've got a interoffice library book coming that should be some records on that. But it's not available electronically like so many other things now are. But we'll see if I find anything. The story on Bridget is still yet to be told, and it's still being filled out. And there was one other little thing on this sampler that has always intrigued me, and I was talking to Ray about it, and she gave me an idea on that. You can kind of see, like, right up there in the center, there's those three little dots that are outlined. And there they are there, just coming down off of the Lily of the Valley. And here they are down here. I've been wondering what those are. And Ray's Catholic too. She said, Jackie, I think they're rosary beads. Have you counted them? And no, first of all, actually, wait, yes, I have now counted them. And I have a collection of rosaries. I don't know why I didn't think of that. But there is no discernible way to count these as far as like rosaries, have, if you don't know, they have 10 beads and then one that is single and then 10 more and one that's single and 10 more. And so those are called the decades. And so these are not in here in any particular order that might indicate that it was about praying a particular prayer, or, there's not 10 in an area or anything like that. But they are all throughout this sampler. So if you're working on this basket of flowers, which I know some of you are just working on the basket, you might start thinking about those little outlined dots as being rosary beads, because that's definitely what I see here now. There is not a crucifix in this, because Ray said sometimes in certain celebrations they'll drape a rosary throughout some flowers, and she wondered if there was a crucifix that was hidden in here, and there's not. Of course, there is a cross that shows up here, and there are 2 crosses in here, but there's not any attached to those little beads that we could say is a crucifix. So Bridget just continually talks to me. And I sure wish I knew who she was. As I think about her a lot, I've talked before about being in relationship with her. And in my downtime at work, but sometimes between customers, there's enough time that I can do a Google search on the internet. This time I was just thinking, what would she have looked like? And I just looked up. Photographs from 1840 do exist. Photography went back that far. And so I just Googled 1840s Irish girl and middle class, because we think now that it's probably at least a middle class or more upper class girl that could stitch such a thing, just because of the cost of materials. But I found just 2 or 3, which I'm gonna put up there just because I was just wondering, what did Bridget look like? What was her life like? Now, mostly when you see pictures from that are early photography, there were such long exposures. They had to sit still for so long. They always kind of looked serious and solemn. And these pictures kind of indicate that too. But I like to think that Bridget obviously had a creative nature, a sense of an exuberant spirit, as well as being able to sit still and stitch. So anyway, that's Bridget. And I also was kind of looking at where she might have learned how to stitch. And that led me back to Kathleen Littleton, who I've talked to a bit about Bridget also. I've brought up the presentation that she did at Sampler Symposium in January that I was at, and we got this booklet from her there. And she and I were talking about something called the Irish Model School, or the Female Model School. I'm sorry, it wasn't the Irish Model School, it was called the Female Model School. And it was originated in Dublin, and it was a school where they taught people how to teach. And needlework was obviously a large part of the curriculum at that time. And they made up small books of different types of sewing and needlework. It was everything from knitting and darning and samplers, but sewing small garments. So here's a little, get that in there, a little excerpt from one of those books. And I found a couple of others online that I'm going to put pictures up here too, because that was the way that people taught. You didn't have printed copies of books or charts, although they became available at one point. But so much of this in its early days was taught by a teacher to their student, a governess to their charge, a mother to their daughter, family member to another family member. It was all shared in that way. And by having little booklets like this with different samples of different types of needlework in it was a way not only for the teachers at this female model school to prove that they were capable of teaching this stuff, but to also then have that as they went on to share it with their students. So there's just so much to learn about this hobby. It just interests me to no end. And I really appreciate that so many of you have found it interesting as well. Because, you know, I could be boring you silly out there as you're hearing me talk about Bridget and trying to, you know, just fill in this world that she lived in. Because if you haven't guessed by now, I'm a process stitcher. This is all about the process to me. And I will love having that sampler and Antoinette. I will love having them finished and on my wall at some point. But the journey that I'm going on with Bridget and with Antoinette in its own way, it hasn't captured, obviously, my imagination in the same way. But the process that this has been for me and the journey it has taken me on was nothing that I could have ever expected, and continues to surprise me and delight me and confound me. And I think there's still more to be learned. So I want to thank you for going on that journey with me. So moving on from the stitching, there were several things I want to share, you know, resources and plans that I have. And I know in a couple of videos ago, I showed this book to you, Sewn in America, Making, Meaning, and Memory. This is actually the catalog of a museum exhibit that is going on right now at the DAR Museum in Washington, D.C. And I know Karen Combs has talked about this, and Susan Stanley has talked about this, but just a couple of days ago, I saw a couple more resources that I wanted to share about this. So I happened on, as the old YouTube algorithm will do, it suggested to me a video, and it's a FlossTube that is in its, well, it's been around for a little while because this was FlossTube number 11, called Travels with Tricia. And her channel is called Thistle Threads with Tricia Wilson Wen or Nguyen. It's a name that I never know how to pronounce. It's spelled Nguyen. Anyway, Tricia is a scholar on samplers. And she recently, in her September 4th video, went to the DAR Museum and did a little tour of that exhibit. And I highly recommend you see that if you're at all interested in needlework and how it has been done, its contribution by women from early days on up to some more contemporary things. It's just a wonderful exhibit, and it was great to have the overview that Tricia takes us on. And then there was also a talk that the DAR Museum put on in middle of August, I think it was. It took place during the day, and I unfortunately was not able to attend like I had hoped. It was on Zoom, but they videoed it. And that video is available on the DAR Museum YouTube channel. And they also have an online exhibit as well. And I'm going to put links to all of these videos down in the description box that's below this video if you're watching on your iPad or phone and you are interested in more about that. But one thing that jumped out at me when I was watching Tricia that kind of relates to Bridget is there was this, it's actually a piece of a quilt. And I know it's going to be hard to see here, but it's made up of pieces that were cut out of some chintz fabric and that were appliqued to a ground fabric. And then the pieces were stitched around with satin stitches. And there's just some leaves up in there. I've got a screenshot that I took I might put in, but there's some leaves up in here. Yep, these right here. And these up here. That have some dark lines in them, some veining, and there's something about looking at these chintz pieces that reminded me just a little bit of the flowers and leaves in Bridget. So it just got me wondering if maybe, as I said, that's such a unique sampler, which has been one of the more confounding things about it, is trying to locate it in any certain country or place, is because it's such a one-off type of thing. It just like, where was Bridget's influence even? And so seeing that picture of the applique work just made me wonder if maybe Bridget was inspired by some fabrics that she had around her, or a tapestry or something like that. So anyway, again, I just wanted to bring your attention to this Sewn in America exhibit. The book, the catalog is wonderful. I know it's hard to see that. Just a wonderful resource if you're at all interested in the history of needlework. Highly, highly, highly recommend. And then a couple of video resources for you. And the online exhibit is really wonderful. They've got availability for you to, of course, zoom in really closely on some of the exhibits and see some of the details. And really worth your while if you're at all interested in historical needlework. So that is Sewn in America. And we're moving on to some haul. I don't have a lot this month, but something that pretty significant. But before that, I wanted to show something I've been waiting on for a while from the attic. I know a lot of you have seen this chart. Jean Lee from the attic has talked about it, how meaningful this was to her. And I actually, before I heard Jean talk about it, I heard Karen Combs talk about it. Just this sentiment that's on this little one right here, and I'll read it to you. It says, "No one can look upon the needle without emotion. It is a constant companion throughout the pilgrimage of life." And any of us who are used to working with needle and thread and know what working with needle and thread means to us and brings to our lives can't help but be touched by that. So when Jean was talking about it, of course, the attic has made a silk conversion, so I got that. And that's what I was waiting for. They were missing for a long time one of the silks, and they just got it in. So that came in the mail from the attic, and I'm pleased to have that. And then, of course, the Needlework Marketplace was recent, and I know a lot of people found a lot of beautiful things, which I did too. But the only thing that I was tempted to say, pre-order that for me, was, and like many people, you were enamored with the Stacey Nash animal crackers. So I got mine. I got on the Lindy Stitches website. She had some of the best, I think, videos that she put out about the things that we're going to pre-order. So I pre-ordered mine from Stephanie at Lindy Stitches. And the one I got, this one, Clovis, the badger. Now, all of them were cute. The fox, and I know all of you who are Halloween fanatics wanted that little bunny that has the mask and the pumpkin. And again, cute. I'm not a Halloween stitcher, so you know that about me now. But this little badger, oh my gosh, I wanted her right away. Having grown up so close to the Wisconsin state line, I was in northern Illinois, and Wisconsin was less than a mile away. And Wisconsin is the badger state. So yeah, I needed a badger. But this is one of the cute, more gentle British badgers, I think. So her name's Clovis. And you know, when I was at Country Sampler a couple of months ago, I got the little bunny, Maggie May. And the reason I wanted to bring her up is because they share a lot of similar threads, these two. So if you have them and wondering about that, a lot of the colors are the same. And this one, probably you can't find this fabric right now. It's 36 count needle bling, designs Shrekie's Tan. Shrekie's Tan is the one I'm doing Antoinette on. But yeah, I couldn't find 36 of that. So I have such a linen stash, you guys. I'm sure I can find something. But also, I ordered a couple of 36 count cuts of a couple of things because I realized I have some other animal crackers that I want to do. I hit the old download button on Stacy Nash's Etsy page. So I needed a little more 36 because mostly I have 40 count linen. So I also got Paisley, the little snow girl. Isn't she cute? You probably all have either made her or seen her, but this is Paisley. And her companion, Whitaker. Now these I just downloaded as PDFs and had them printed out at my local print shop so I could have the color versions. But there might be some animal crackers in my future because they sure are cute. And I also was finally tempted enough to download a Barbara Anna design that Sarah of Sew Me Sarah and her friend Sally, Flossie Sews and Grows, have been working on as part of their Fun for 50 sale that they've been doing all year, celebrating their mutual 50th birthdays. And that is a Barbara Anna design called Light. And it's this beautiful fox. And this one's actually free. So if you're interested at all and don't have it, it's free. And it's through that Ko-Fi shop that Barbara Anna has links to on her Instagram page. But the reason I went ahead and downloaded it now is because Sally on her Instagram page showed her progress on it. And she's working this design on a really beautiful kind of plummy purple fabric. And if I can fit it in, I'm going to share a screenshot right up here. It's what made me download this chart. And that fabric, I looked for something similar and wasn't able to find it. And it came from a UK dyer. Oh, her name. How could I not remember? It's Kate, but I can't remember her business name. I'll put it here on the screen. I reached out to her to see if I could get it, and because it was a Fabric of the Month Club, Sally told me. And while the version of that linen that Sally is using is not available, Kate offered to dye me my own piece so I could get it in the color that Sally was using. Now, what kind of customer service is that? I mean, really great. So I'm so excited about that, and I'll get started on that at some point. And I can just hear you guys out there saying, Jackie, you're supposed to be a monogamous stitcher. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can say that anymore because there's so many things that I want to stitch. But really, you know, I'm mostly going to still be working on Bridget and Antoinette. But the next thing that I want to, oh wait, no, I'm going to hold you off because I was going to show one more chart that I acquired, but I'm going to hold off for a minute because I got something else. So Have you all ever seen one of these boxes, these wooden boxes? This was put out by the Singer company. It's called a Singer puzzle box. And it opens up, it's hinged. And the reason it's called a puzzle box is because look how it opens up. Now this one has all the guts removed. If you see one, if you're a vintage sewing machine enthusiast, you've probably seen one that's full. It had a velveteen type of lining, and it was full of all sorts of attachments for your Singer sewing machine. It had bobbins and hemming foot, shirring foot, bias tape feet, and some needles and all sorts of stuff. But this one had its guts removed. And the reason that I got this is because, once again, I've been influenced by somebody out on Instagram to make it into sort of a customized stitchy box. So I'm gonna put a picture up here of what I saw on Instagram. Isn't that cool? And at some point I'm gonna try and make that with this. I've got lots of quilty fabrics that I want to use. This particular box I think might be slightly older than some. It has this little hook hinge here. You see that? It certainly is not secure enough to hold this shut because there's not one on the other end. So I'll probably eventually have to put like a ribbon around it or something. But some of them have some metal pieces in the top and bottom that probably sort of click together when you close that down. But I just love these boxes. I've always, because I do have an interest in old sewing machines, and I have a hand crank one, I've looked at these sewing boxes many times. And if you find one with all the stuff in it, they can be a pretty penny. But when they've got all their stuff removed, more affordable. So I think I'm gonna make it into some sort of a stitchy box. So there's that. I found that on eBay, by the way. And there are several out there if anybody now, having seen this, is interested in acquiring your own. So lastly for my haul is, I showed you last time this amazing bag that Barry of Stitch Folk made to me because of our mutual Mildreds in our families. We both had Grandma Mildreds. And I had known that I was going to need to put something really special into it. So I found the something special. I am on the Country Sampler mailing list. And I love looking at that as soon as it shows up. And in that, in the most recent, well, I think there's been one since then. But in that, came across this sampler right here. Julia Rachel de la Mare, 1849. This is another one when I saw it, I just knew I needed to stitch that. Now this was part of a club that Country Sampler does called Threads of History. So it went out to all their club members. I'm not a member of the Threads of History Club, but I know the ladies at Country Sampler are really nice, first of all. And I was also thinking that maybe they had some extra ones. Maybe, it never hurts to ask, right? So immediately that day, I called up Country Sampler and said, hey, I saw this in the newsletter that I got this morning. Do you have any more of those? And they said, why, yes, we do. Do you have a preferred count? We've got 36 and 40. And I said, yes, 40, please. And so I was able to get the whole kit and caboodle. This came in true Country Sampler style. I'm going to take it apart for the first time to show you because it comes in one bag with the threads, kind of behind the chart. So you're seeing here the linen and the threads. And the called for fabric was Miss Crescent No, not Miss Crescent's crown. Mason linen. And they ran out of that, and so then they started packaging it with needle and flax linen. And so I got the needle and flax alternative, which I'm not mad about. I would love to try some Mason linen. I haven't yet, but the needle and flax piece that I got is beautiful. This is Hemingway. And I should have pulled a DMC so I could tell you what it's like. It's a beautiful warm brown. It's blowing out here on the screen. Everybody always pulls them back near to them and says, oh yeah, that looks better. Not quite. It's a beautiful warm brown. So this is some needle and flax. Beautiful, just very subtle modeling on that. Needle and flax Hemingway. And then it's a mixture of Classic Colorworks, Gentle Arts threads, and some Weeks Dye Works threads in here. There are some Weeks. Just a mixture. Beautiful colors. And I just want to point out that in the last week, Kathleen Littleton, this is from Cross Stitch Antiques, by the way. I don't know that I said that. And of course, again, that's Kathleen Littleton's company. Just this past week, she put out a sort of correction on one of the colors here. There's a called for color from Gentle Arts called Brown Bear. I was just looking at the back of it because I made a note on the back of this. Called for color called Brown Bear. Let's see if I can put my hands on it real quickly. No. Anyway, it was a different dye lot than what she intended. And it did not yield the type of result that she intended. So she's given an DMC alternative for that color of 844. So if you've got this chart, or if you're interested in this chart, it's not on Country Sampler's website. It may be by now. I think they were intending to put it on there, but at the time I got it, it was not there. And so you just make a phone call. They're wonderful ladies, like I said, and they will let you know they had already run out of fabric for it and had more on order. And we're going to put some more kits together once they got that. Here's the Brown Bear. I found it. So I think she intended for this to be a darker brown than what this dye lot is. This is pretty light. It's got kind of a lot of gold in it. So that's the one you'll want to change out with DMC 844. But it's just a lovely sampler. And Julia Rachel de la Mer was from Guernsey. And this is the first time I've ever heard of a specific sampler from Guernsey. And the only reason I knew about Guernsey was from the movie, and I know it was based on a book called the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. And Guernsey, from what I learned from that movie and just doing just a brief research, is it's in the Channel Islands and it's very close to Normandy. And so at one time it was French speaking. It's not technically part of the UK, although there is English spoken. What was it called? A duchy, which I don't really know about that, but it's not part of the UK, but they speak English there. They have their own political system, but it's very close to France. So there's a lot of French influence in Guernsey as well. And so the reason I'm going to be starting on this, sitting here holding it up and not telling you when I'm going to start it and why, is my birthday is at the end of September, the very last day of September, actually. And I know it's customary to do a birthday start, so that's when I'm going to start this. And I'm not going to do a stitch along. I have one planned, as you know, in December with Sarah of Sew Me Sarah. I think that's about all I'm going to handle. But if you want to start with me, we'll have a start along and start Julia de la Mare. So I like to buy myself birthday presents, and so that was one of them. And then I added this box, came from Hobby House, Saju, a pair of special scissors. Now these are the tortoise shell ones. You see how beautiful they are? It's just obviously reproduction tortoise shell. And I had the hardest time deciding between mother of pearl handles or the tortoise shell ones. And I didn't have the money for both. I decided on the tortoise shell. So I made up myself my special project bag, my special project, and special scissors, French scissors to go with a French influenced sampler from Guernsey, Julia de la Mare, that I'll be starting on September 30th. So if any of you have not started her yet, I know a lot of you have purchased this, and I don't blame you if you've been so excited and want to get started, because it is Sampler September after all, and which I didn't really talk about because I stitch samplers all the time, and I knew I was going to be starting that one at the end of September. So there's that. If you want to start, if you can wait, if you have patience and want to wait and start that with me on September 30th, I will be starting that. And I have a week off work that I was going to take a little vacation away, but given the fact that Archie still, you know, by that time he's going to be about 5 weeks out of his surgery. I think going anywhere, putting him in boarding him or taking him along anywhere, I think that's just going to be too hard on him. So I'm going to do a little staycation, and we'll get some stitches into Julia while I'm home for that week. And also I've talked to Gretchen at Florilegium. I think we're going to do a little linen dyeing while I'm off, because, you know, she and I have talked about dyeing a piece of linen for another chart that I have, a green bean sampler by Shakespeare's Peddler. So we're going to do that. And then the other really exciting thing is that in a couple of weeks, on the 21st, my sister Judy and her husband are going to be popping through Weston on their way to Colorado, and they're bringing home a couple of framed samplers, the two that I took to Lynn's of Madison at the end of May to be framed. My big one, the Consider the Lilies, and then the smaller French sampler Mathilde that came from the Hands Across the Sea red box. So those are finally coming home, and I couldn't be more excited about that. I'm so excited to see them because she's seen them now. She's shown them to some relatives who are local before she brings them home to me, and I just can't wait to be able to finally share them with you and put them on my walls. So actually, the next time we talk, I'll probably have them here and I can show them to you. So then one last thing before, you know, I'm going to do a little bit of quiet meditation today, but I wanted to tell you about 3 new FlossTube channels that, one I haven't watched yet, but I just want to tell you about it, and 2 that I have watched and I just feel like you should know about. So the first one is called Professor Stitch, and I know Brenda and Laura have talked about her and some other people, but she's only had one so far, and I'm hoping that if I bring her up again, and maybe we can encourage her to put out another one. Her name is Jamie. She's a history professor from Texas, and, you know, history and samplers are her specialty. So history and samplers, I'm there. Talk to me more about them. So Jamie, I hope you'll come back, and her channel is called Professor Stitch. If you haven't seen her first one, I would definitely recommend it. She's she starts a lot of things and feels like she needs more discipline in order to finish some things, but she has a lot of fun things to share and some different things that you might not have seen before. Then another channel that I want to tell you about is a man who is stitching, Stuart's in Stitches. Stuart's in Stitches. He's Scottish. I love me a Scottish accent. And he's just come out with his second video. I first heard about him, I think, from maybe Sally, Flossie Sews and Grows. But I always love it when a man sits in front of the camera and tells us about what he is stitching on. And Stuart, he has quite a variety of things that he likes to stitch. If it attracts him, he's going to stitch it. He has everything from full coverage to fancy ladies to samplers and everything in between. And he's just fun to listen to. And apparently he has a closet full of project bags with things in them that he doesn't even remember what he has. And he's going to be revealing them as time goes on. So I think everybody is sitting on their hands waiting to see what Stuart has in his project bags. So Stuart's in Stitches. And then brand new to FlossTube, and like I said, I haven't seen her yet, but her channel is Lake Girl Stitches. Her name is Steph. And if you're a follower of Contented Needleworker Kim, you've seen her and her friend Steph do a video when they were both at summer school at the Attic just 2 or 3 weeks ago. They filmed together about some of the things that they were both interested in that they were doing. And Kim has encouraged Steph to sit in front of the camera and do this. And I can tell you for a fact that it takes courage to sit here and do this. So I really want to commend Steph for doing this. I'm interested in what she has to say and what she has to share, just based on what I saw her say and share with Kim. And so I hope you'll go over and look at her channel, and that's called Lake Girl Stitches. So that's a new one. So that's the end of my quote unquote regular content today. I think I'm just looking around. I think I've shown you everything I wanted to. And so I'm gonna now go into just a little bit of quiet time. And I hope you'll stay because it's a little different than what I've done before, but if you're not interested, I totally get it. So thank you. And I hope to see you next time. But what I'm gonna do today is take you on a little journey. I like to go on them if you haven't figured that out. As I've mentioned, and as I've been sitting with Bridget, it has, and envisioning what her life might have been like or where she might have lived, it's really made me think about places that I have visited and the impressions that those places have left on me. And I have been to Ireland. I've been there twice. Unfortunately, it was so long ago. It was in maybe it was 1990 when I went there the first time. I was married at the time. Both times I went there was with my husband at the time, now ex. And he is an Irish musician, and a good friend of mine sings Irish music. They were in a band together at the time. But we decided to go to Ireland because we wanted to see some of the counties and parts of the country where some very specific styles of the music came from. And I don't remember taking a lot of pictures at the time. Certainly it was before cell phones, so we didn't have that. But nonetheless, I don't have any pictures. I just have memories that I was left with of that. And so it just made me think of other places that I've been that have left an impression on me. And Scotland would be one of them. I've traveled to Montana several times that have left a lasting impression on me. Northern Wyoming and northern New Mexico. These are all places that I've been to, if not more than once, long enough that while I was there, I just felt like there was something about my experience that I was, hearing things that were very distinct to the area, smelling things that were very distinct to the area, and hearing things that gave you a real sense of place. And I have images for those other places, just not Ireland, like I said. But I almost feel like I absorbed the essence of those places. And so when I see pictures of them, or when I hear even somebody mention those states or those countries, I can call up with such clear recollection what it's like to just be in those places. And so what I want to do today is I'm just going to put up some of my pictures to share with you some of those lasting impressions that I have. Some of the pictures are landscapes. When I travel, I also tend to go to more literally sacred spaces because I feel like the whole land we live in, it can be considered a sacred space. But churches, I'm going to add some of them. And I'm going to play some just nice music. And then I will, at the end of the visual images, I'm going to insert a picture of a sacred space that I have here in my apartment. That's my meditation and prayer space that have just mementos of some of those travels in them. And then when I come back, I'm going to have a little prayer that I will share. So I hope you enjoy. Let's, first of all, get comfortable. If you haven't already, maybe you've been slouching. Maybe you want to sit a little bit differently. And let's take some deeper breaths. Maybe at least 3. Let your shoulders relax. And this is not going to be your typical vacation slideshow. It's just going to be some beautiful images and some music. And just listen and look. And maybe it will remind you of some places that you've been, that you have memories of being in sacred space and just being, truly being with your whole self in those spaces. And we'll come back in a minute. Take some deeper breaths now. I hope you enjoyed that little journey into some sacred places that mean a lot to me, and I hope it did remind you of times when you were in beautiful spaces that you have deeper recollections and connections to. So I'm going to close today with what would be called a metta prayer or a loving kindness prayer. This version of it, of which there are many out there, was shared with me by my yoga teacher that I took classes with regularly. But it's been shared in many ways, in many versions, and most recently I heard a gal named Campbell who has a little YouTube channel called Cam Echo Stitches. She used to have stitch therapy, but Campbell recently shared a metta prayer as well, and it just really reminded me of this and how applicable it is to so many of us. So if you want to close your eyes, please do. If you want to just continue to sit quietly as I share. May all beings be at peace. May all beings be at ease. May we know the light and beauty of our own true nature. May we be healed, and may we be a source for healing in the world. Namaste, which means the light in me sees the light in you. Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with me today. I look forward, as always, to seeing you again the next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.